So it's time to get started on the neck. I've picked this curly maple, plenty long. It's a little bit narrow though, so you'll see these little wings stick out a bit. I'll just select a portion of the grain on each side, cut some little pieces off and stick the little wings on there, and you'll never see it when it's the joint, when it's complete. I'll show you how that happens. It'll come out fine when I start cutting and routing it. My first step is to determine which side I want to use. I'm thinking this might be nice for the back of the neck. A little bit more interesting patterns going on here. I do have a couple of bug holes that I need to fill, but that's no big deal. The side here, I think this will look nice. What's nice about these acrylic templates, you can see right through them and pick the most interesting part for the headstock. I'm going to go with ebony for the fretboard. I already slotted this thing, I mentioned that earlier, and I'll make a video on how I slot fretboards the next time I do a build. This is decent ebony, but it's a grade B cut, so I have to deal with a little bit of unevenness on the corner down there toward the front, toward the higher frets, but it should be okay when it comes time to radius the fretboard. It's a little bit thin there, but we'll see how it goes. So let's get started. So first up, I'm going to go ahead and trace this thing out right where I want it. I'm going to measure and determine where the nut will go. And I'm going to try to get through this stuff, tell you what I'm doing ahead of time so that I'm doing less talking. You can just kind of watch what's going on. But tracing it out, and we'll next glue on the wings for the headstock, and then I'll be working on the truss rod channel. Here I'm just cutting the little pieces for the wings on the headstock, looking for a good match to the grain, and then just a simple glue up, nothing complicated about this. Just make sure that the grain matches, pieces don't slip and slide around while they're being clamped, and give them a couple hours to set. A couple hours later, come back, pop the clamp off. Everything looks good. I'm going to set the template back down on there and retrace around the edges so that I can see where to cut. So next I'm going to get the center line established. Again, super important. Everything else really on the build is based on this. So if you don't get this right, you run into problems later on. Again, you don't want to be just good enough. You want to be precise here. So I'll get that center line established and mark where I'm going to put the nut, and that once those two things are established, it's pretty much off to the races with tools until the next critical measurement step. But yeah, this part you can't this part up. All right, so this is a StewMac two-way truss rod. They're hot rod truss rod. It's 18.5 inches long, a 1/4 inch wide, and 3/8 inch high. So the channel needs to be exactly as close to exactly 3/8 of an inch as possible. 1/4 inch wide. I need to leave a little bit of space at the end, so I'm going to overlap it a bit so that there's access to the truss rod, little hex nut, after the whole thing's done and the headstock is thicknessed properly. So it's measure. I got a 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to use a router bit, and then 1/4 of an inch for the main length of the channel, and then at the very top it's a little bit wider. So I'm going to go 3/8 of an inch on that width, and the whole thing will be 3/8 inch deep with a little bit of extra depth around that wider part. And if you've handled a truss rod before, you know what I'm talking about. So here I've got a straight edge. It's a planed edge on this 2x6. It's clamped down, and I have to measure the distance between the exact center, dead center of the router bit and the edge of the router, and I'll show that here in a second. It's 3 inches, so I need to be able to ride across that rail precisely so that the truss rod channel is exactly down the center line and not off to one side or the other. So again, measure 2 times, 3 times, do a dry run with the power off, whatever you got to do, make this thing perfectly precise and centered. right, so the 1/4 inch channel is done. Now I need to widen it out a bit toward the top. I'm going to go underneath the nut where the nut will go and into the headstock a little bit. There's my 3/8 inch wide bit, and it's the same process, just a little bit wider for the last, I don't know, maybe 2.5 inches. Alright, so it came out great, perfectly flush, end to end. It's a nice tight fit in there, it's not going to rattle around at all. Got the access channel cut into the headstock. There's where the nut will go, and we'll see when I level the headstock out, you'll have perfect access to that, to the bowl, to the little hex screw. So now we're going to cut it out on the bandsaw. Now for the to flush route, the full profile against the template, I'm using my top bearing router bit, 3/4 inch I believe, and you'll see I'll go around this thing and it'll just really clean up nicely. The bandsaw was just a rough cut to take a little bit of the load off the router bit. The router will do all of the cleanup. And here, where you've seen this in other videos, I now take the bottom bearing router bit and flip it over, finish it up. It'll trim off all of the junk on the top. So what I'm doing now is drilling small holes in the nut slot and the 12th fret slot to do locator pins. And I just use little tiny, I don't know, 16th inch wide nails for this. You'll see here in a second, I break the bit off at the 12th fret, and we're gonna have to deal with that later. Count closely so you know which fret you're on, but yeah, this is something I do so that the fretboard does not slide around at all when it's being glued up, because that's critical. So it is worth it to drill a couple holes in here, stick locator pins in. There it was, right there's where I broke it. And then I try to dig it out and it just doesn't go well. So I do a second hole and just kind of go with this here, you'll see. was actually kind of painful. All right, so here I put some tape, painter's tape over the truss rod channel inside there. The truss rod is in there, and then I'm going to do a glue up. So I just put the tape on there so that I obviously don't get glue into the channel. Glue it up, pull the tape off, stick the fretboard on. Pull the clamps off a few hours later. Actually, I think they let this go overnight, and then go over to the bandsaw and flush trim as close as I can the fretboard material off, and then I go back over it with the router again like I did before. I think I used the bottom routing bearing bit on this, but you'll see then the fretboard, neck profile, everything perfect. That worked out really well. Now the neck is a by design just slightly wider than the neck pocket, and that's so that you can then trim it down, which I'm doing here. Just a known flat surface with a cut sanding belt on it, and I go back and forth checking it often until it's just a perfect snug fit. And the goal is to get it to fit in the neck pocket to the point where you can lift the guitar body up a little bit. It's that snug using the neck without securing it with any fasteners, and that's what I'm doing right here. And it seems to, that not quite done yet, a little bit more, a few more passes, and then it results in a nice clean fit. All right, so it's time for the fretboard inlays. I wanted to do, my last build I used some mesquite wood from my yard. I actually turned it on the lathe, but the contrast wasn't as good. There it is right there. It's my walnut one. It's a rosewood fretboard. The inlays just didn't give the contrast that I was looking for. They turned out really nice, but there's just very little pop going on. So I'm going to use these. I don't know, mother of pearl, just regular dot inlays, which I think will give really nice contrast against the ebony fretboard. So I measure, just ballpark. The inlays are 6 millimeters wide, so I'll go about 1/4 inch, and I do a little V like I've done before on the fretboard. Count down to the 12th fret, do a little V there. Take the straight edge, connect the two intersection or the little, center point of the V line, and just draw a straight line. And then I do the same from the 12th fret up on the other side of the fretboard because I like the way that looks. and then I just take a center punch and I just eyeball it, the halfway point between the frets, but I stick to the line so that they're not wobbly, and then I just center punch all of the holes before I drill them out. Like I mentioned earlier, the inlays are 6 millimeters wide, so I take a 6.2 millimeter wide bit. You'll see in a second. It is a brad point bit. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there's a very sharp little tip to that, which sinks nicely into the center punches, and it makes for really as close to perfect of a perpendicular hole as possible. And this is very important because you don't want wobbly or out of center looking fretboard inlays. That really does make a difference. People look at that. That's one of the things you look at when you first grab a guitar. I do anyhow. And here I'm just setting the inlays in the holes. I flood them with a little bit of CA glue, press them down, and there's not a whole lot more to be said about that. Don't want to get sloppy with the glue, but you do want to be generous. Alright, with the inlays in there, it's time to radius the fretboard. This part can be arduous. I need to cut off those little wings. You'll see I'm going to 14-inch radius on the fretboard, but before I get started on it, I'm going to need to knock those little wings down. I need to thickness the headstock a bit to take that edge of the nut off so that I can get a clean pass with the radius block. So I'm going to do a thicknessing of the headstock right now before I get started on the really tedious sanding the radius into the fretboard. And I'm shooting for about a 14 millimeter thick headstock when it's all said and done. So over to the bandsaw. And over to the spindle sander to cut the radius in the headstock transition. I'm not happy with how the lighting went. Sorry about that. The lighting is on the wrong side of this thing for you to get an idea of it, but you'll see it's just a nice round transition. I use a 1-inch on this one. I like the 1-inch radius, I guess, going from the nut to the top of the headstock. And then after this, I flatten the headstock out on a belt sander because it's a little wobbly off the bandsaw, but it turns out nicely, and let's just see how this goes. Again, measuring thickness, shooting for about 14 millimeter. I can always fine tune it by hand with some, and I do want to leave a little bit of slack space in there so I can come back by hand and just finish things up, make it perfectly flat, card scraper, whatever tools to make it nice and level and the proper thickness. So time to start sanding this thing up. Got my 14-inch radius sanding block here. I'm going to start with some coarse grit sandpaper. You'll see me pausing now and then with a little brush and a bottle. I save the sawdust. I know that sounds silly, but it makes for great wood filler later on inside of the fretboard inlays, where the frets, the tangs stick into the fretboard. If there's any gaps or holes, a little bit of CA glue and this the dust is wonderful. So let's get to sanding. And I'm taking my radius gauge, just confirming that it's perfect. Now I'm going to fill some of these little tiny gaps that have come up, a little bit of the sawdust I was talking about earlier, and I'm just going to touch some CA glue in there and let it sink in, run back over it with the radius sanding block, and it'll look totally pro. And so that's pretty much the process. I'll go ahead and fill and sand. And it really did come out nicely. I just wanted to show you this. So it looks really ugly for a minute. It's all right. Knock it down with some sandpaper and it comes out totally pro. And then you go finer grits of sandpaper to smooth out the board. Pretty simple stuff. Just keep parallel with it. I think I'm done with this video now. There's a lot to do yet. I'm going to do it in the next video. Next video, I'll do side dot inlays, fretboard inlays. I want to show you a repair that I did here coming up in a second. It just flashes briefly, but I need to do the neck pocket. I'm going to do threaded inserts for the neck pocket. If you haven't done that before, super cool. I think you'll like that. Need to drill out the holes in the pickup cavities for the wiring. A little bit of cleanup in the here and there. Jack hole, I need to drill that. Tuning key holes. The nut, of course. I'm going to shape the neck. So lots of stuff ahead. Some of the best stuff is coming up yet. Now I had a router wobble on my neck pocket. I think I flash a picture of it here in a second, where it left a little bit of a gap between the body and the neck right there. See how I got that glued in there? That's a cut off piece of the body that has a bit of maple on the top and a bit of the red alder on the bottom. And I didn't get the process because his camera issues and whatnot. But then I rerouted the neck pocket around that little tiny splinter of wood, and it cleaned it up beautifully. There's no gap now between the neck and the neck pocket. Here I'm just showing that the truss rod cavity that has full access. I don't need to do any trimming. If I did, I would use a rotary tool or a Dremel type tool. I don't know why I'm showing this tool so much, but that's how I kind of clear out access to the truss rod Allen key. But that's not necessary here. I cut it just the right length. Oh yeah, I broke off that drill bit earlier, so that's going to be an issue. See that? I'm probably just going to chip a little, Dremel a little piece of the tang out and on the fret tang to clear that. I can't get it out. I can't drill it out. I don't know how I missed that. But in any case, I'll show you the workaround that I do for that. And it's not ideal, but it should be fine. Shouldn't affect, tone or playability or sustain or any of that stuff. But yeah, I think this is done. I hope you join me for the future videos. I'm about halfway through yet. There's a lot of detail work left to do. I don't know why I keep pointing to these inlays. Oh, they're too close together. That's another mistake. So here I'm like talking about the mistakes that I've made so far. What other mistakes? I did that. Oh, the control cavity. I wobbled that. Here we go. That's right. So you'll see me fix this. Probably use some tape, I guess. I don't know why I'm showing the tape that is the culprit for this. And by the way, that's not wet. That's CA glue. I like to reinforce some of those holes with CA glue. But there's the spot that I'm going to fix. All that's coming up. I'm going to stop talking. And I hope you enjoyed this. If you do, leave a comment. Would you like to see me do more of or less of? Talk slower, talk faster, stop talking, and make these videos better so that, hopefully you can learn the way I did and do your own way. Oh, there's that part that's screwed up. I need to fix that. So we'll hit all these mistakes throughout the rest of the videos. So appreciate you. Thank you.